College football playoff bracket projections. Mine on top. Zach's is on the bottom. This will be much quicker than going through our Big Ten standings that we went through. I'll go ahead and go first. Zach, I had Texas and LSU at 8 and 9. Like I said, I do think LSU probably gets the players, and so I'm going to give them a little bit more credit here. And so I am going to have them making the playoffs and defeating Texas in the first round. I have Georgia as the number 5 seed team going up against Boise State, the number 12 seed. I have Georgia obviously winning that. Ohio State is my 6th seed going up against the 11th seed Penn State. The playoff committee has shown they do not care to put two teams from the same conference against each other. Maybe they try to get a little bit, more fancy with it to try and get maybe Penn State someplace else or Ohio State someplace else to get Texas and LSU play somebody else. But at least for my seeding and the way I see it happening, that's where I have it. I have Ohio State beating Penn State, Texas Tech and Alabama as the 7 and 10 seed. I have Texas Tech beating Alabama. Indiana versus Texas Tech. I have Indiana winning that one. And then I have, which it kind of switched it there. I don't know why it did that on my thing. Sorry about that. And then I have Miami and Ohio State. I have Ohio State getting some redemption against Miami there and getting that one. Oregon versus Georgia. I have Oregon as the 4 seed, and Georgia I have losing that one. Oregon moves on to the Final Four, and then Notre Dame and LSU. Notre Dame is my number 1 seed. I think they most likely go undefeated this season. It's a very favorable schedule. If they don't go undefeated, Notre Dame fans should be worried about what the playoffs is going to look like, because you should go undefeated in that schedule. I have Notre Dame winning that one. Notre Dame versus Oregon. I have Oregon coming out on top over Notre Dame. Indiana versus Ohio State. I have Indiana coming out on top over Ohio State, getting them again. Indiana and Oregon in the national championship. And I got Oregon winning the national championship. I don't feel great about it, but that's what I got. So, any thoughts, Zach? I think you're muted, Zach.
I was muted. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I think. Let's see. Yeah, you do have. So you have Texas. Do you have Texas at 9 and 3 or 10 and 2?
I think I had them at, what did I have them seated at? Yeah, I had them at 9 and 3.
9 and 3 as a 9 seed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have Texas, LSU, and Alabama all 9 and 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. And you have Texas Tech as your Big 12 champion.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm trying to think if we have any repeat matchups, and I'm not sure we do. I don't think we have any. The only matchup that we have the same is a semifinal between Indiana and Ohio State. I think that is legitimately the only repeat matchup out of all of ours.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So,
But no, I think your bracket makes sense. Like if you think LSU is going to be good, I can totally see that LSU Texas matchup and LSU beating Texas. I have more and more, the more that comes out about Texas, the more I am concerned. I almost didn't put them in my bracket, but yeah.
Well, and it's also how high they are too, right? I mean, LSU, they're like number 11 starting the season, and then I don't think Texas A&M is going to be as good as people think. I don't think Ole Miss is going to be as good as people think. Alabama's number 13, and then they have Texas and Tennessee. I think there's room for error there, and also some wins that get them in the playoffs. So
yeah.
So yeah.
That's good.
All right, let's go to a super chat by Dave, and then we'll get to yours. Dave, thank you for the $5. Appreciate it. Let's do a sound here for Dave. There we go. Nice little Gus Johnson for Dave. He says, for the $5, thank you, Dave. I thought the playoffs expanded to 16 this year. I hope Minnesota proves you guys wrong. JR and, Kent State boy. You can just call him Zach. You don't have to call him Kent State boy. I think, no, it's not 16, obviously. Or not, I'm saying obviously. I'm saying obviously, I don't think that is what I'm trying to say. There was talks about 16. That's what the SEC wanted, but the Big Ten wanted 24. So no, it's not 16. And even if it was 16, that wouldn't be until next year because they missed the date and timeline in order to get that to happen. But I don't think the Big Ten's going to go for 16. I think it's either going to be 24 or stay at 12, unless the Big Ten backs down on what they think. And listen, I think Minnesota could have a good year. I was not very close to having Minnesota projected in my bracket. Could they go to the playoffs? Sure. I'm not going to say they can't, but they were not super close for me.
Yeah. We both had them at 7-5, right?
Yep, we both have them going
Yeah.
over
I think, and
the win total on FanDuel.
is people have to understand something. The Big Ten is not what it used to be. 7-5 is going to be, like, for a lot of schedules, is actually going to be better than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, similar, I know USC fans were not happy with us. 8-4 with that schedule. I know people don't want to accept it, but it's like an NFL like schedule in terms of similar competition. The best teams go 13-3 or 14-2. I think we need to recalibrate win-loss totals, I think. And it's going to continue to get messier.
Trojan Fight says, speaking of the Penn State, not thrilled. They are getting the night game versus USC for the whiteout. They didn't have to play a night game at the Coliseum in 2024. I suspect they won't have to do that when they return. Yeah, I saw the announcement. Whiteout versus USC on October, what was it, 10th? I think is the date for that game.
That's not surprising at all.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest game on Penn State's schedule by far. I always took it as a badge of honor whenever they had it. It's like, all right, you think that well of us that you're gonna make that happen? Love it. But yeah, obviously it does get hard with the with the scheduling and everything. So who knows nowadays with that? All right, Zach, you want to get to yours?
Yes. So I'll just go round by round. First round, I have Miami as the ACC champ as the 5 seed, taking on Boise as the group of 6 representative. I have Ohio State as the 6th seed at 10-2, BYU as the Big 12 represented as the 11 seed. I think the Big 12 is going to be a mess this year, and I'm not sure any team is going to do better than 10-2. And I think 10-2 in that conference rightly deserves them the 11 seed because it's not a good conference. The ACC is not a good conference either, but Miami's fairly elite. I think Miami's going to drop probably a game to Notre Dame. And they'll be at 11-1. That's why they're the 5 seed. Ohio State, 6 seed. BYU, 11 seed. I have Ole Miss. I don't love this pick at 7, but Kawan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss are very, very enticing. And I think it's hard to, if you're going to pick a team between them, Alabama, LSU, I'm going to pick Ole Miss. And part of me is betting on the Lane Kiffin implosion. And I know I said that I thought Alabama could be elite. I just think Kalen DeBoer is way over his head at Alabama. I just don't think that fits his cult. It doesn't fit him. It's not a good fit. I think he's a good coach. I just don't think it's a good fit. So I have Ole Miss as the third, as the second SEC team. I have Iowa as the 10 seed at 10-2. And in the 8-9 game, I have 10-2 Washington hosting 9-3 Texas. I think Texas is going to get the benefit of the doubt for the first time, the only 9-3 team in my playoff. But I think they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. But I do think they are going to have to go to Washington. Quarterfinals, Miami beats Boise, and they go on to play Georgia. Ohio State beats BYU, goes on to play Oregon. Indiana plays Ole Miss, and Notre Dame plays Texas. And I have Miami beating Georgia, Ohio State beating Oregon. I have Indiana beating Ole Miss and Notre Dame beating Texas. which leads to the semifinals of Ohio State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Miami. I think Notre Dame wins the rematch there, and I think Ohio State wins the rematch between Ohio State and Indiana. I just think Ohio State's built to get better throughout the season. Like I think they're going to be much better at the end of the season than they are at the beginning of the season, particularly that defense. I think Notre Dame gets revenge though on Ohio State, and I think Notre Dame wins the title.
Wow, we both got some revenge going on in the national championship game.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, very interesting, Zach. I like your thought process here. I would love to see Iowa in the playoff at 10-2, where you had them at. I think there's going to be more than one 9-3 team in the playoffs. I had Georgia as going 10-2 and being the fifth seed and not being in the top four because I just think that it's going to be more difficult for them this season. But also Georgia doesn't have a super difficult schedule, so I think they have probably the easiest or second easiest in the SEC this season, which is not totally uncommon. The SEC has protected Georgia quite a bit the past few years with some of the teams that they've played and where they've played at. So, but yeah, I would love to see Iowa and Washington both in. I mean, if you get Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, Iowa, Washington, that's 5 teams right there, baby. I love that.
Yep. Well, and I think that, again, the schedules are so imbalanced that I think it lends itself. I'll just share one more thing. I had Notre Dame the 1 seed. I think they'll be the only undefeated team. I have Indiana 2 because while they lost 1 game in the regular season, they beat Oregon in the Big Ten title game. Oregon's only loss is to Indiana in the Big Ten title game, and I have Georgia 11-1 and winning the SEC.
Very
so
good.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how we got there. So
very good. Very good. I'm noticing the graphic at the bottom was mixed up a little bit too because it had Georgia and Miami going into that one, but then Miami's down there and Notre Dame. So
that's all right.
Yeah. I mean, it's got all the right matchups, so that's all that matters.
Yep.
That's all that matters. All right. Very good. Very good. People in the chat, I was kind of watching them a little bit. They're still on Minnesota a little bit. And, USC kickoff times. Let's go ahead and do our awards for the season. I can go first on this as well. I got Dante Moore being Offensive Player of the Year with Oregon having only 1 loss and being the top of the conference there with Indiana. I think that with the hype that Dante Moore is getting in the preseason, I think that he probably gets that. I have Elijah Hardy, linebacker at Indiana, getting Defensive Player of the Year. They do not give out a Transfer Player of the Year, but that's just kind of something we do. Who do we think is going to be the best transfer? I think it's probably going to be Josh Hoover at Indiana this season. If Indiana goes 11-1 after losing Fernando Mendoza, I don't see how there's going to be another transfer that is better than Josh Hoover, unless maybe just Turbo Richard in the running game of Indiana is that amazing. And then Freshman of the Year, I have Savion Hyder, running back at Michigan. I have picked a Michigan player to be the breakout or the Freshman of the Year like the past 3 years whenever I do this because they always seem to have one that does that. And Savion Hyder has a lot of hype with him and everything. And I could see him and Jordan Marshall being one of the best running back duos, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country. And if that's the case, then he's going to deserve Freshman of the Year recognition, at least being considered for it if he doesn't win it. And then my breakout player, Quade Carr, running back from Washington. He's got quite a bit of hype this fall camp season. There's been a little bit of the running back position that's been questioned there at Washington with who's going to kind of be the main one there. I think that they found, Quade Carr, this redshirt freshman. CBS was talking him up a little bit too, and so there's a lot of positive momentum with Quade Carr here right now. And I think if people focus in enough on Damon Williams Jr., you get a top running back there, and he could go over 1,000 yards this season. You have a better, more experienced offensive line as well. The left side of that offensive line should be good. Cody Green, John Mills. As long as Cody Green can handle it, being a true freshman, he was a 5-star. So as long as he can handle the run game and everything else, which typically freshmen are better in the run game than they are in pass protection, I think that Quade Carr could have a really good season this year with Washington, be the breakout man.
That's a good pick.
Thank you.
A good pick.
Thank you.
I can go.
Sure.
I'll with offense, I have Jeremiah Smith. I think Ohio State's going to really try to get the ball into his hands more. I think that's a lot of what Arthur Smith's been talking about. And I think receivers are going to emerge to the point where they're going to have to leave Smith single covered at some point. And I just think he has so many high profile games. He has so many high profile opportunities. I think he might, I don't think he'll have the same stat line as Devontae Smith. It was Devontae Smith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be that prolific, but I think it's going to be fairly prolific. And I just think because of that, I think might trump some of the other quarterbacks. And so that's my pick. I think he's going to have a transcendent wide receiver season. I almost put Elijah Hardy, but I decided to go Isaiah Bones Jones. I think you could just put Indiana linebacker defense. That's what
I almost
what I
put
would do
Josh
there.
Burnham too, the edge. He's been doing really well in fall camp as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Indiana player, defensive, yes. They might be it's funny. As much as we talked about Oregon's defense, Indiana's defense might be the best in the country. Like, I think
Maybe
cohesively, at
Yeah.
least. For transfer, Josh Hoover is the obvious one, and I could have put Cam Edwards there, but I put him as breakout. I put Coy Parrish because I think the way that Oregon has handled transfer safeties, we saw it with Dylan Thieneman. They just put him in really good positions to succeed. I love Coy Parrish. I think he's a heck of a player. And I think him playing in that Oregon system is going to get him a lot more recognition. So I have him as the transfer. Freshman. Were you going to say something, John?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Freshman. I feel like we got to talk about the Jeremiah Smith of defensive linemen. Luke Wafel. Edge, USC. I don't think he's actually going to be like Jeremiah Smith in being that transcendent freshman year, but I think he's going to be one of the best freshmen, if not the best freshman, in the country. And I think he's going to have a major impact this year. And then breakout player, I love me some Cam Edwards, running back at Michigan State. I know you could put him as transfer too, but I think he's going to be the focal point of an offense that needs him to be great, and I think he will be.
All right, good stuff. We got a super chat from Dave again. Dave, thank you again for another super chat. Appreciate that. There you go. Count it, as Gus Johnson likes to say. Do you think the talent of the Big Ten that they will have more NFL draft picks than the SEC? I don't think so. The talent of the Big Ten is more developmental and not, geared toward the athleticism that typically gets guys drafted, or like the freakiness of them. The freak list that the Athletic put out, the SEC still had more guys on that freak list. In fact, Jeremiah Smith wasn't even number one. It was Nick Harbor from South Carolina, and Nick Harbor stinks. Like, I'm just being honest. I'm not trying to disparage the guy or anything, but he's not good. And that's, to me, like, kind of what happens with some of this NFL stuff sometimes, is they get so enamored by, the size, the athleticism, and everything else. Is their question, is he a good football player? Or is he an athletic freak? Typically, they're going to go with the athletic freak. And the SEC, if we're just being honest, has a whole lot more athletic freaks than the Big Ten does, but that does not mean that they're better at football than the Big Ten.
I forget, is Lenora Sellers still like a first round projection?
I don't think he's a first round projection, but he's still up there.
It's because he looks the part. But
Yep.
he hasn't, and unless if he gets developed, it doesn't matter. Who's the guy that could throw like 90 yards from his butt back in 2007? Jamarcus Russell. Everybody loved Jamarcus Russell. He's like surefire first round pick because he can throw 90 yards from his knees. Did you forget that you can't be on your knees in football? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, Nick Harbor is currently projected as a third round pick. Dylan Stewart is projected as a first round pick, and Lenora Sellers is projected as a first round pick still as well.
When will we learn?
He is the 5th QB on the NFL consensus board. So
I would be. I mean, I think Lenore Sellers could be developed, but with where he's at right now, I'd be ticked if he was my quarterback.
hey, you know who is a top 10 quarterback?
Dante Moore.
Drake Lindsay.
Ooh.
There you go.
And cue the Minnesota fans saying we should have Minnesota higher than 7-5.
Thank you for the super chat, Dave.